Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are on Daf Gimel Amud Bet, the bottom of the Amud, the last narrow line, Tanu Rabbanan, by the beginning of the new piece in the Gemara. We learned in the Mishnah that there are several people who are patur from Megillah, from reading, okay, from going to 3 times Aliyat HaRegel, Ru'iyah, rather, and the beginning of the Mishnah tells us, Shoteh ve'katan, they are patur. So who is considered the shoteh? Now, this is not such a simple question to answer, because whoever you think is shoteh is not necessarily halachically considered shoteh. There's a big doctor and Talmid Chacham in town over here. He was telling me he was hired by the Beit Din in Eretz Yisrael because of his job as a doctor, as a psychologist. The Beit Din there wants to know when someone in the issues of Gitin, which if a person is halachically considered a crazy man, then it complicates the sugya of Gitin very much. And sometimes they need to know who is crazy, who is not crazy. And a person that you may think is crazy, he may say, well, he's not crazy. He has this condition, but it's not crazy. And the other person that you think he is just a difficult person, he may actually be halachically considered crazy as shoteh. So now, what is the criteria for what we call shoteh? Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Ezu shoteh, hayotze yechidi balayla, vehalan bebet hakvarot, vehamekara kesutom. A person that goes out alone at night and wanders in the night, in the darkness of the night. Now, nowadays, someone goes alone at night, you have different issues with him. But imagine a society that had no artificial lights. There's nothing going on. We learned in the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, the Daf Gimel, Sugya of Chanukah, that rigla de tarmudai, the last people who would be seen outside would be some people would be gathering some wood, and that's about it. That's few minutes after the sundown, and from then until the morning, you had coyotes, you had other things, not coyote people, coyote, but that's about it. So if a person goes alone at night, he is crazy. You would think, right? Says the Gemara. Or halan bebet hakvarot, someone that goes and sleeps the night in bet hakvarot, and he doesn't have any specific issues with his mother-in-law. He's going without having any issues. He's going and sleeping in the bet hakvarot. And says the Gemara, someone that rips their clothing. So now we have a machloket amoraim between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan. Do you have to have all 3 of these, or either one of them suffices to pass you as a crazy man? Says the Gemara, Itmar, Rav Huna Amar, Achiyu Kulam Bebat Achat. Rav Huna holds that you have to have all 3 of them. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Afilu Ba'achad Mehen. Rabbi Yochanan says, either one of them that you have, you pass as a crazy man. Hechidami, says the Gemara, Id Avidehu Derech Shtut. Gemara says you have to examine this. How is he doing it? Is he a person that looks like a crazy man and is doing this like a crazy man? Or he looks like a normal citizen that's doing a crazy thing. So Gemara says, if he's doing it derech shatut, if he is acting like a crazy person, afilu b'chad alami, even one of them should suffice. If he's not doing it derech shatut, afilu kulhu namilo, even if he's doing all 3 of them, it should still be good. So says the Gemara.
Saying like Rabbi Yochanan? He's saying like Rabbi Yochanan?
No, the Gemara is saying, what's shayach to have machloket? How is he doing it? What do you mean that there's a machloket Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Huna? Is he doing 1? Is he doing 2? Is he doing 3? Look at how it's being done. If he's acting like a crazy person and he's doing this like a crazy man, so then 1 should suffice.
Unprovoked.
So says the Gemara, Le'olam dekavid lehu derech shtut. He is doing it derech shtut. But what is the situation? What's the svara of Rav Huna, who holds you have to have all three? Says the Gemara, Rav Huna will tell you the following. The olam dekavid lehu derech shtut, 3 lines up. Vehalan bebet hakvarot emor kedesh tishra alav ruach tum'ah. When a person goes and sleeps, if he was only doing that one thing, that's sleeping in bet hakvarot, let's say, well, maybe he's really not crazy. The reason he's doing it is because he wants to connect with koach hatum'ah of all the negative forces spiritually that exist in bet hakvarot. He wants to seep all of that in order to start doing kishuf and witchcraft and so on and so forth. So maybe he has a purpose of what, and you'll be surprised to know that even today, there are people in China and other places that they go bury different things in Bet HaKvarot with notes and different things. You know, some American guy went there to be educated, and he was going crazy. Like this voodoo and all kinds of different things that they have in Far East. They still practice these things, and they believe that there's koach hatum'ah in the Bet HaKvarot, and hence a person could be trying to invoke koach hatum'ah in order to have those powers of tum'ah. So therefore, maybe he's not crazy. He's just trying to be utilizing koach hatum'ah in order to use them for witchcraft. Says the Gemara, if he was only going out alone at night, emor gandripas achde, that maybe he's going out because he has a problem. Rashi says over here, if you take a look at the longer Rashi, le'olam dekavid lehu derech shtut, Rashi there says, hayotze yechidi balayla emor gandripas achde. And he says, Ani shamati choli ha'oches mitoch da'aga, that if a person is doeg, he is concerned, he is anxiety-ridden, that's a sort of choli nefesh, a condition emotionally, psychologically, that he could be walking around at night. Veli nir'eh, Rashi says, I think he's going shenitchamem gufo v'yotze lemakom ha'avir, that he has an internal heat exhaustion, and he's going out to just cool off, right? So therefore, if you would only be doing that one thing, we would think that he's fine. He's not crazy. He just has a condition, either psychologically, or that he is too hot and he's going out to cool off and get some air. So says the Gemara, and if he would just do the third one of ripping his clothing, emor bal machshavotu, that he is having some thought problems, again, not enough to be considered a crazy person. If he's doing all three of them, all the simanim and signs of a crazy person, so then at some point you stop and you ponder, you wonder to yourself, like, this guy is crazy, right? He's ripping, scolding, he's going on, he's sleeping in the Bet HaKvarot. It must be that he is not all there. So says the Gemara, that's the Shita of Rav Huna. This becomes a comparison to the case that we have in Bava Kama Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, that if a shore gores 3 random animals that it sees, it gores an ox, it gores a gamal, a camel, and a chamor, a donkey, then it becomes chazaka for him that the 3 times is shor nagach. It becomes now a shor mu'at, so to speak. It's a chazaka that any animal that it's going to see is going to gore. So therefore, it becomes mu'ad lekol ha'behemot. It becomes an ox that has a chazaka for any animal. So says the Gemara here also, if he does 3 things already, you could imagine that this person is not all there, and he has chazaka for all crazy things. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa, Ishmi alel Rav Huna hadetanya. Rav Huna says, I have a braita that says clearly that one is sufficient. One thing is sufficient. And if Rav Huna heard this braita, then he would have never said you need all 3 of them together. Now, clarification for this is that the Amoraim are expected to know all the Mishnayot, but they're not necessarily expected to know all the Braitas. So therefore, you sometimes find that an Amorah missed a Braita, but if an Amorah is going against a Braita without any Tanaic source supporting him, then an Amorah cannot go against a Tana. So therefore, they would have to retract and they would have to change their mind. So Rav Papa says, Rav Huna would have changed his mind had he known this Braita, which clearly says one would be sufficient. Well, it's not a matter of being available. First of all, not all these things were written at that point, but also, yes, it was not necessarily available, so they were not expected to know the entire thing. Mishnayot was the main body of Torah Sheba'al Peh that was accepted, like the Rambam writes, and therefore, all of the Amoraim are expected to have known prior to their discussions the Mishnaic, the Mishnah work of Rabbi, but not necessarily all the Braitas. There are a lot of Braitas that are floating around, not only the Braitas the Braitas that were composed by Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shaya. There were other Braitas as well. The more legitimate ones were Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shaya's Braitas, but nevertheless, even those were not necessarily known by all the Amorai. So says the Gemara, what is this Braita? Third line, the Tanya, Ezo Ishote, who is a Shote? Zeh ha'me'abed kol ma shenotnim lo. A person that whatever you give him, you can't trust him with anything being given to him because you give something to him and he destroys it. You give something to him and he loses it. He gives something to him and he rips it. Hamekares ketzuto. A person that has a garment and rips it is considered a person that destroys what you give him. You gave him a piece of clothing and he rips it. That's hame'abed kol ma shenotnim lo. So therefore, it seems from this Braita that by mere fact of ripping his clothing alone, without sleeping in the Bet Kvarot and without going alone in the dark of night, he still would be considered a shoteh. You see clearly like Rabbi Yochanan, says Rav Papa, and not like Rav Huna in this one. Says the Gemara, now, what does exactly Rav Papa mean? So it says the Gemara, if he would hear this Braita, Haba Hadarbe, he would be Choser, he would go and go ahead and retract his psak. So in the Bet Midrash, they had this question, Ki Haba Hadarbe mi mekarak sudo Haba Hadarbe, Dumya deha, or Dilma mikulu Haba Hadar teku. Gemara has a question, which one would he take back and change his mind on? If he would have heard this Braita, that Shoteh is defined by somebody that you give him something and he destroys it, he loses it, what would Rav Huna's reaction be? Would he just retract the last sack that he had and he would paskin, well, if a person tears up their clothing for no apparent reason, just tears clothing, that's considered a Shoteh. But if he goes alone at night, but he's not doing any other signs, then it still is not going to be considered a shoteh. He said three things you have to do. Rabbi Yochanan said any of the three. Rav Huna said all the three. Now we found a Braita that seems to say only ripping your clothing or losing or breaking anything else that you're given is a sign of shtud, a sign of craziness. So what would Rav Huna do if he would see this Braita? Would he just agree with Rabbi Yochanan on this one item that the Braita says, that if somebody loses what they give him or tears it, destroys what they give him, he's going to be considered a crazy man, but not agreeing with the other two things Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan would say, if you go alone at night, also you're considered a crazy man. If you go sleep in the bed, also you're considered a crazy man. Would he agree with Rabbi Yochanan on that also? And become exactly like Rabbi Yochanan, identical, or maybe he would only agree with this one element of the Braita of Hama'abed Kol Ma Shenotnim Lo. He still would stick to his guns in regards to Hayotze Yechidi Balayla, of someone that goes alone at night, or someone that sleeps in the Beit HaKevarot. So Gemara says we don't know. Teku Teku stands, of course, for Tishbi Teres Kushot V'Avayot, that Bezrat Hashem Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come and we will have more clarity on this. Says the Gemara, V'tumtum Ba'adruginos. We mentioned the Mishnah, the next category of the 12 categories that are exempt from this. Hakol Chayavin. Everyone is obligated to go up to Yerushalayim aside from these 12 categories. So the next group of those exceptions was a Tumtum Anadroginos, that their gender is not a clear one. Their ever of the genitalia is not a clear one. So therefore, we don't know what gender they are. Tumtum is one that you simply don't know because it's covered, atum v'satum, right? It was not developed outside of the body, it was developed inside, covered by skin. So you don't know, is it 100% man or 100% woman? You don't know. And androgynous is androgynous, which also has different types, really medically speaking, but simply put, is a person that has both simanei zachrut v'nakvut. He has both man and woman simanim in the development of their evarei hamin, and therefore we're confused. We don't know is how to judge this. This has the simanei, the signs of a woman, signs of a man. So which one is it? You can't be both. So is it one and not the other, and it's messed up the way it genetically was developed, or is it a third category, not a man and not a woman? But the way halakha looks at both of them to put both in the same category is a safek ish, safek ish. We don't know what their gender is, and therefore we deal with them as safek. That's, we mentioned in the Mishnah that they are not chayav b're'iyah. They're not obligated to go up to Yerushalayim. So says the Gemara, how do we know that? V'tumtum v'adroginos, tanu Rabbanan. When it says the pasuk, kol zechurcha, the pasuk that says, shalosh pa'amim b'shana yira'eh kol zechurcha et penei Adon Hashem. When it says zachor lo'otzi et hanashim, when it says a male is coming to exclude the women, of course. Zechurcha, your scharim, your male individuals, lehotzi tumtum v'androginos, is coming to exclude also what we call a doubtful zachar, is safek zachar, which we don't know for sure if they are men or women, like tumtum and androginos. And kol zechurcha, all of your scharim, all of your male, the rabot et aktanim, is coming to add the ktanim have to go. Now, those of you who remember the Mishnah, your eyebrows went up right away, because we mentioned in the Mishnah, the first category of being absolved is ktanim, is cheresh shoteve katan. And now you're saying is l'rabot et katan. So you have to deal with that. The Gemara is going to ask that question. So it says the Gemara, Amar Mor, zachur lo'otzi et hanashim halamali. When you say that you need the pasuk zechurcha to exclude the women, why in the world would you need a pasuk to exclude the women? Lama likra, why you need a pasuk? Michti, mitzvah aseh shazman gramahu. Going up to regel is mitzvah aseh shazman gramahu. You have to be there by the 15th of Nisan. You must be there by the 15th of Tishrei. It's a positive mitzvah that is time bound. And we know, kol mitzvah aseh shazman gramahu nashim turot. Why in the world do you need extra source, extra pasuk to tell me that nashim are patur? Says the Gemara, v'chol mitzvah aseh shazman gramahu nashim turot. Gemara answers, istrich. It's needed because there is a precedent. There is once every 7 years that the aliyah la regel is not just an aliyah la regel, but it's also a mitzvah of hakel, as we had in the previous stuff. And we learned a lot of the halachot of re'iyah, of going up to shalosh regalim from hakel. You remember? We learned two halachot in the previous stuff from hakel. So we know that it's comparable. We know that you can learn halachot from hakel to re'iyah. So one would have argued and said, wait a second. Hakel, it says clearly, anashim v'nashim bataf. Everybody goes up to hakel. So if I didn't have an exclusion in re'iyat haregel, if it didn't say yira'eh kol zechurcha, it just would say shalosh pa'amim b'shana yira'eh et pnei ha'adon Hashem. I would say, well, you know who? Whoever goes on hakel should go on re'iyah as well. Therefore, you need, even though that you have a mitzvah aseh shazman grama, because you have a precedent in a different mitzvah aseh shazman grama, that also is a positive mitzvah. That's time bound, going to hakel once in 7 years. But because we set up a precedent that women would be obligated in this specific type of time-bound mitzvah aseh, I would say you should apply to here, just like we applied other things from hakel to re'iyah. Therefore, without a explicit exclusion, I wouldn't know that women are patur. Very good. Says the Gemara. We will learn gezerah shava re'iyah from hakel, just like we did in the previous stuff. Just like in hakel, nashim are obligated to go. Afka nashim chayavot. Here also, women should be obligated and chayav. Oh, kamash malan is coming to teach us zechurcha and not women. Gewaldig. Says the Gemara. Amar mor zechurcha leotzi tumtum androginos. We mentioned that the extra chaf at the end, zechurcha, is coming to teach you that tumtum and androginos are patur. Bishtama androginos is terich sarkadat nachamina hoil beitle satzach chayev. I understand why the androgynous should be needed to be learned, because an androgynous is a person that has sad zachrut. It has the male simanim. So therefore, I would say, well, every man has simanim. This guy has simanim. So you should maybe go. And then I understand why you need to tell me that if he has also the simanim of a woman, it will be patur. That I understand. But says the Gemara, the bria bifne atzmohu. Sorry, I skipped. Androginos isterich sarkadat chamina hoil veitle sad zachrut dichayev kamash malan. The bria bifne atzmohu. The kamash malan of the pasuk is zechurcha, that this is your zacharim, your regular zacharim, and not this strange zachar, quote unquote, that has zachrut, has the male genitalia, but it's not a regular zechurcha. The pasuk is coming to teach me it's a bria bifne atzma. It's a creature different than a regular male. So that I understand why I need an exclusion. I need a pasuk. But tumtum, ela tumtum, safekahu. A tumtum is a safek. Maybe it's a woman, maybe it's, we don't know what this is. It doesn't have any sign of zachar for you to say, oh, maybe it should be chayav. So says the Gemara, ela tumtum safekahu. Since when you need a pasuk to exclude a safek? Now this is not at all a simple thing, because we have a massive machloket between the Rishonim on a regular concept of safek deoraita. What is the halacha by a doubt in a biblical mitzvah? Normally speaking, every single person around this table would say safek deoraita lechumra, which means you for sure would need a pasuk to exclude a tumtum, because you would say, well, it's either a she or a he. It's for sure 100% male or 100% female. It just didn't develop outside the body. You need a surgical fixing in order to show what this is, but it's for sure one or the other. So safek doraita lechumra. Now this, without getting too much into it, is a machloket between Rashba and Rambam. It's known as the machloket Rashba and Rambam. Rambam famously holds that safek deoraita mi deoraita lekula. That on a biblical level, when you have safek in a even on a biblical manner, you will be mekel. The reason that we say, and all of us know, safek deoraita lechumra, that we go to a stringent side when you have a safek on deoraita, is only because it's a din derabanan to be machmir. But if it would be, had it been a din deoraita, if you would ask the Torah, I have doubts whether I'm obligated to this mitzvah from the Torah or not, the Torah would tell you be lenient. Rambam would say. And Rabbanan, Chachamim came along and said, no, you can't play with fire. So Mida Rabbanan, we are obligated to be Machmir when it's a doubt Doraita. Others disagree with this. Others disagree with the Rambam. But this, would, on its surface level, would seem like a very strong raya for the Rambam, to the degree that the Gemara seems to say, well, it's a safek. Why do you need a pasuk? You should be patur from it. But again, it's beyond the scope of a little talk over here. This is a complicated subject, not for now. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye. Abaye says, no, you're correct. This is not a regular tumtum. You know what type of tumtum is this? It's a type of tumtum that you know that it's a he. How? The betzim are developed outside the body, but the gid, the shaft, is not there. So it's not the whole genitalia that is developed inside. Part of it is outside. You can see that this is a man. And therefore, you know that this is on the medical side of things, this is an XY. You know that this is a man, but it's not created, developed in its nature as a regular male. So is that excluded with Zechur Cha, your regular male individuals? That's why we need the pasuk to exclude this guy as well. Because it's not your regular Zachar. Now you'll see, when we get to the development of other things we learn from this pasuk, you'll see that many other people who are not considered regular citizens are also excluded from this pasukim. Says the Gemara, Amar Mor, Kol Zechurcha L'Rabot Et HaKtanim. We just mentioned 5 minutes ago that Kol Zechurcha is coming to say that the Ktanim also have to come. So we said in the Mishnah, not like that. We learned the Mishnah 5 minutes ago. That the first category of people who you exclude from Aliyah L'Regel, from the obligation of going up to Yerushalayim, is Cheresh Shoteh V'Katan. So how in the world are you telling me that Katan is Chayav? Says the Gemara, no. Amar Abaye, lo kasha, it's not a question. Kan B'Katan she'higia lechinuch, kan B'Katan she'lo higia lechinuch. The one that's absolved from going up to Yerushalayim is a Katan she'lo higia lechinuch, is a minor that is so young that's not even included in training process, is less than 6 years old. It's a Katan she'lo higia lechinuch. When we say it's obligated, Kol Zechurcha L'Rabot Et HaKtanim is coming to include Ketanim that are older than Chinuch. Now, what's the obvious question? The obvious question is, since when Chinuch is a mitzvah? No, right, the Chinuch is mitzvah Rabbanan. We mentioned this many times before. The massive machloket rishonim, whether the mitzvah of Chinuch is on the child or is on the father, and is it including the mother or is only the father? But be that as it may, it's the mitzvah Rabbanan. When you say Kol Zechurcha, the word Kol is coming in the pasuk to teach you Ketanim, that means it's the Oraita. You're learning it from the pasuk. It can't be, because we know that Chinuch is not the Oraita. So says the Gemara, Katan she'higia lechinuch derabanan hu. That's a mitzvah of Chinuch. A mitzvah of Chinuch is the Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, Ein achinami, correct. It is the Rabbanan, v'kra asmachta ba'alma. The pasuk is just the asmachta. Asmachta means the Chachamim who mandated and instituted a certain Rabbanan, they found a hook to hinge this on from the psukim. Now the Maharal explains this in a fascinating way in Be'er HaGolah, in Be'er Rishon, in the beginning of his Sefer Be'er HaGolah, that even those things, they learned it from the psukim. It's not that they decided we're going to do this Rabbanan and then they went and found a asmachta. They learned that this concept exists from the Torah. He gives the example from the Masechet Avodah Zarah, Daf Lamed Hey, the Mishnah over there, by Bishul Akum, that it's the Rabbanan law, it's a halacha, which is the Rabbanan, but he shows that we learn it from the instructions that Moshe Rabbeinu gave us in order not to mingle with the goyim. So if you want to stay away from assimilation, that's where you look, and that's where you learn the halacha, because Moshe Rabbeinu actually told us how we stay out of the way of assimilation. Says here will be the same thing. Well, sometimes we actually could, not for now, but here we're not doing that. Here we're saying zachar for one thing, zechurcha, the extra chaf at the end is for one thing, and kol zechurcha, the three different additions to the pasuk, each one of which we're learning something from. Says the Gemara. So if you say that this is the Rabbanan, so why is kol there altogether? Why do you need kol? It says the Gemara. Lichta acherim is coming to teach you the teaching of acherim, aka Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is called acherim. The Tanya acherim omrim hamekametz v'mitzaref nechoshet v'abursi. Three different jobs are very smelly. That the person that does them the whole day naturally will always be smelling horrible. And it's not a pleasant companion to have on the way to Yerushalayim. And this is hamekametz, a person that would pick and gather the excrements of dogs. This would used to be used for processing leather and so on. It was a very and bursi also is a different element of processing leather. And mesaraf nechoshet, someone that would refine copper, would also be very smelly. So says the Gemara, they're pturin, last narrow line. Min ha're'iyah, they're patur from going up to Yerushalayim, mishum shenemar, because the pasuk says, kol zechurcha, all of your zcharim. That means only a person is chayav to go to Yerushalayim that could be going with kol zechurcha, could go as a companion, as a caravan, together with other people. This person no one wants to travel with. So therefore, there's no kol zechurcha. It's a big chidush. It's a massive chidush. This teaching of Rabbi Meir. So says the Gemara is coming to teach you the acherim, the Rabbi Meir's halacha, that a bursi or a mesaref nechoshet or hamekametz, they are pturim from re'iyah. So says the Gemara, that only a person that could go with other people with kol zechurcha is chayav yatzu elu she'en re'uin la'alot. These ones are excluded because they can't go with the rest of the people. Second white line says the Gemara, nashim ha'amadim she'enam meshukralim. So we mentioned in the Mishnah that women and avadim she'enam meshukralim and slaves who are not meshukrar, they are patur from going. Says the Gemara, Bishlama nashim kedamara. Nashim, we learned why they are paturot, right? That we learned. And avadim menalan. But how do you know that avadim are patur? Amar Rav Huna Amar Kram. Rav Huna said from a pasuk, El peneh ha'adon Hashem, 3 times a year, shalosh pa'amim b'shana yira'eh kol zechurcha, the same pasuk that we've been speaking about. You should go up to Yerushalayim, El peneh ha'adon Hashem, to the scene of Adon Hashem. Why do you say it in such a strange way? We don't find other places in Chumash that says Adon Hashem, just says Hashem, El peneh Hashem Elokecha. Why do you call it Adon? It's coming to teach you something. It's coming to teach you, says the Gemara, Mi she'en lo ela Adon echad. Only a person is obligated to go that has one master, one Adon. Yatzazeh sheyesh lo Adon acher. To exclude an Eved who has another Adon, another master, a human being, a basar v'dam. Lama likra, says the Gemara, wait a second, stop, pause. Why do you read the pasuk to exclude an Eved? Michdi, let's see. Kol mitzvah sheisha chayevet ba, Eved chayav ba. An Eved Kanani is obligated to all the mitzvot that the woman is chayav, and is absolved from all the mitzvot that the woman is absolved from. Says the Gemara, Kol mitzvah she'en isha chayevet ba, en ha'eved chayav ba. The Gamar la mi'isha, we learn it from Gezerah Shavah from women. So why do you need to say it in the pasuk? We got to expand on this, B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow. But the Gemara says, Amar Ravina lo nitzlecha ela lemi shechetzio eved vechetzio ben chorin. It's coming to teach you not a regular eved, but an eved that has 2 masters and one of them has releases. So this is coming in full circle with what we learned in the previous stuff of chatzi eved vechatzi ben chorin, and something that B'ezrat Hashem will expand on tomorrow morning. Be'ezrat Hashem.